Hey guys, so as you may have heard, there was an issue on the Japanese server of War of the Visions where multiple people pulled from the same banner and got the exact same units in the exact same order. So I just wanted to show you guys in programming how that can happen easily and maybe try to talk about what exactly might have happened on with Gumi or whichever developer decided to update their banner code. Okay, so let me start by just going over what the code does. For right now, we're just going to look at this. This generates a number between 1 and 100, actually 0 and 99, but 1 and 100, let's just say. And then this, this is our banner. This is disabled for right now. And what this is going to do is display the result. And then this part of the code just basically is going to let me summon again if I want to or not. So let's just run it now and see what happens. So basically it's going to summon 10 numbers. It's generating 10 random numbers, 24, 39, 93, etc. It's just 10 random numbers. And if I were to run it again, it's 10 completely different random numbers. 70, 77, 48, 73. But what I want to show you now is what would happen if I get rid of this line here, right? So I'm actually going to delete it. I was just going to comment it out. But if I delete it and I rerun it again, I get 41, 67, 31, 0. So let me close out of this program and run the same program again without changing anything. And I get 41, 67, 34, 0. So I added this so I can summon again, so I can show you guys. If I summon again without closing the program, I get a completely different set of numbers. But if I was to close the program again and then run it, here I am with the same exact sequence of numbers. And if I were to summon again without closing the program, I get that exact same second set of numbers. So technically you're not closing War of the Visions or anything, but once you come off the banner and summon again, I don't know exactly how it happened, but once you summon again from the same banner, I believe you're getting a separate set of units. So this is what I believe was happening. And as different users on War of the Visions, it was the same thing as closing this program and restarting it. So just to kind of show you, I'm going to keep this up so you guys can see I'm not like fudging this. I'm going to run it again. I'm going to get the same set of numbers, and this is the one I have in the background. And if I was to say yes again and summon again, I would get the exact same numbers again. So let me close out of this and let me bring back our seed. This is what it's called. This is what's called a seed. All right, so I'm gonna go with seed srand time null. So what this does is it creates a seed based on the time. So it converts the current time, so whatever today's date is and the time, into an integer, into a number, and it uses that number to create a seed. So if I was to run this again, I get a different set of numbers. I could close this out, get a different set of numbers. Okay, so if you've played something like Minecraft, I know this is a good example that some people might know. You might have heard of a seed, like somebody might give you a long number, and in Minecraft, that certain number generates a certain world. If you've ever played Minecraft, it's a completely random world every time you play. So it's possible that someone can give you a number so that you can get the exact same world that they get. So instead of saying seed based on time, we can say seed based on a number. So if we go with number 1, we'll get the number 1 seed. So I believe that's actually the same number we were getting before without that. So again, let me keep this open. I'll run it again, and I'll get the exact same numbers. Okay, and if I were to summon again within the same program, I get the exact same set of numbers. So think of that as you're the same player summoning again. This window is one player and this window is another player. This first part is your first summon, this second part is your second summon. All right, so let's go back to the code and change the seed to, I don't know, 5. Let's just say, let's run this again. And as you can see, it's a different set of numbers. But if we run the same seed again, we get the same set of numbers. It's a completely different sequence of numbers, but it just happens again twice in a row because it's the same seed. Now it is possible for, you know, to have a predetermined seed. Who knows if Gumi might have done something like that, or they might have accidentally put a number in when they meant to say time null, right? So let's go back to our time null. And so what I'm going to do now is enable the banner, quote unquote. And again, this is a very simplified example, so you guys can see it and understand it very easily. I don't know what Gumi's code looks like. It's obviously way more complicated than this. And this is C++. They could be using C# or Unity or something like that. And these functions are completely different. This here would be completely different. This kind of code up here is completely different. So this is just an example. I'm not saying that Gumi did exactly this. So here's what I created as a banner. Basically what I did was, out of the 100 numbers, I made it so that anything less than 50 will be Cezanne. So there's a 50% chance of Cezanne. 75, less than 75, but still above 50 because I did an else if. That will give you a Liart, so 25% chance of Liart. Phoebe, 10% chance. Dario, 10% chance. And Howlet, there's a 5% chance. So obviously these aren't the chances to get a unit. This is the chances to get a certain, you know, UR, MR, SR, etc. So if we were to run the code like this, now we'll see that we get, you know, we'll get Cezanne, and it'll correspond to the number. If it's less than 50, it's Cezanne. So that's kind of that's one way to kind of determine, you know, you have a certain percentage chance of getting a certain unit. Okay, so now let's go back and change our seed back to 1, right? So if we change our seed back to 1, we're going to get those same numbers, right? 47, 67, 41, 67, 34, and 0. And again, let me run it again so you guys can see. We get the same exact numbers and the same exact units. And again, I'll just run it just so you can see it. I'll summon again. It's the same exact. So I believe something like this might have happened. So the question is, how do they determine exactly how this seed is determined? Do they go with the time null? If it's time null, it changes based on the time. So the way algorithms work is there's no way to get a random number with a computer, because a computer is very logical, right? So this function here, it must be a sequence of numbers. It's a sequence of numbers. It's quote unquote random. It's not really random. It's based on something. So what the seed does is it basically picks a different set of numbers, a different sequence of numbers. So let's say I keep summoning, you know, I summon this is my first summon, I keep summoning, you know, this entire sequence is quote unquote predetermined based on the seed. The seed, so somebody back in the 90s or something created this algorithm, and you know, things have been technically predetermined since the 90s. So if you want to think of it like that. So as time goes by, you know, today's date is the 19th of November. That's stored as a specific variable. So that variable kind of influences what the sequence is going to be. But there's no way of knowing unless you somehow memorize every single sequence of numbers. There's no way of really knowing what those sequences are going to be. So that's kind of how programmers do randomness in a game. So, okay, we've established that. So how exactly does this happen where if your banner code is down here and your seed code is up here, how exactly does this happen where Gumi changes something and this up here gets determined? So let's say if it was me and I wanted to change the banner, let's say I wanted to make everyone an equal chance of getting any character, any specific character. I would change it so that there's every 20 numbers, it's a different character. So each character would have the same weight. So there's a 20% chance of getting each character. So now that we go up here, we get 3 Howlets, we get 2 Darios, 2 Zazan, which seems pretty fair. Like we should expect to get about 2 of each. We got about 2 of each except for Howlet and I guess Liarte, we only got 1 of. So that seems about random, right? And again, if we were to change this seed back to 1, and then run it again, and let's run it twice just to kind of make sure, we get the same exact order of numbers and we get the same exact units. Okay, so to me, the real question is, if you're changing things down here to affect the banner, like even if you said, like, let's say change this to a UR unit, change each of these to a UR unit, what is it about changing this that affects this up here, which should be time null? And that to me is the real question. You got to kind of think of it this way. At any time in War of the Visions, there are multiple banners, and each banner is different. So how would you kind of got to think, like, how would you add different banners into the game? So one way I would do it is I would probably, let's say I was a programmer for Gumi, I would probably copy this entire set of code here, paste it down here. Like, this is just an example. This is not going to work. And what I would do is I would just kind of just change this to like rain, change this to stern, something like that, right? And now you have a higher chance of getting rain or stern or whoever's the featured person on the banner. All right, so, and then I would write some kind of code where if selection, this is just kind of random, equals banner 1, use this banner, and then if selection equals banner 2, use this banner. That's how I would do it. Something like that is what I would do. So now the question is, why would something up here get changed when you're only changing this? And I think you kind of have to think about it like this. Programming is really, like, this is very simplified. Programming is very complicated. It's annoying. It's very exact. It's very easy to mess anything up programming. So let's say I was a developer for Gumi and I kind of didn't really know what I was doing. So I'm kind of looking at this. Oh, this looks like it's the code that affects the banner, but maybe I kind of need all of this. And let's say I copied this and pasted this, right? Again, this is not going to work. This is just an example. So now I have this line here. What could happen is the seed can be like reset somehow, or maybe as you're changing, a lot of things can happen as you're changing numbers. Like maybe they change this number and maybe the person gets confused and this number is the same as this number, and like, oh, I want to make it out of 200%, out of 200 possible numbers. And, I want to say 200 for Howlet, and I want to say 140, But what might have ended up happening was, instead of changing this number here, they might have changed this number here. And remember, it's not exactly, this isn't exactly Gumi's code. It can be anything. Like, they can have another function where, let's say this function is named srand. What if this is called sum in rand, and somebody made the mistake of changing the number here instead of changing the number here? You know, something like that could have happened. In my opinion, it's, well, that was basically my opinion. It can technically happen that, you know, Gumi says, hey, I know seed number 1456 is the worst pull ever, and this is gonna make people spend the most money. I've calculated out. I looked at a million different seeds, and this is the best one for making us the most money. Technically, yes, that can happen, but it's actually pretty easy to, you know, like I said, if you delete this, like let's say somebody was like, oh, you know, I'm gonna copy this whole thing, I'm just gonna start a new file, bam, and you know what, let me rewrite some of this stuff up here. This doesn't make any sense. Oops, I all of a sudden now I don't have my seed, and we'll go back to the same scenario where we get the same number every time we run the program. So these are just examples. I don't know for sure what happened. Again, I don't really know what their code looks like. So this is kind of just to give you an idea of how, you know, as crazy as it seems to get the exact same sequence and for you to say it's predetermined, it's actually not that hard programming wise to get the same sequence. So that's pretty much all I wanted to highlight. I mean, it's really up to you to decide if Gumi is cheating you or not. Gumi posts their rates, and you really don't have much of a choice aside from going by their rates. So you really just have to make a decision for yourself. Do you enjoy playing this game, and are you willing to say, like, are you willing to give Gumi the chance of saying, hey, you know, they're probably not cheating people, because someone will eventually find out that nobody, like, let's say, okay, the Final Fantasy IV banner is coming out soon. So let's say nobody ever pulls Rosa. Somebody's gonna say, like, hey, nobody in my friends list has Rosa. Nobody in my guild has Rosa. Nobody on Twitter. Nobody on my Discord. And people are eventually gonna figure out, like, hey, you know, this isn't the rate that they're saying. You know, so for you to say that it's rigged, or for me to say that it's rigged, I think it's a better chance of it being a mistake like this, you know. And the thing is that when it's like, the fact that it was quote unquote rigged, people found that out like pretty quickly, you know. When it's that rigged, people will find out, people will, you know, people share screenshots of their pulls or whatever. People will eventually find out that it's rigged. So Gumi would be dumb to do something like that on purpose, right? So yeah, at the end of the day, it's really up to you to decide if you want to keep playing this game or not. I personally am going to keep playing because, you know, you're not going to get all the units. Let's face it. I mean, you can probably eventually get everything, but you're not going to get it at the prime time of having the unit. So just chill, just play the game, you know, use what you get, enjoy what you get, and make use of what you get. That's really all I can give you. All right, so I think I've talked for long enough. So If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll try to respond to whatever I can.